Okay, would you please stand, and as Lewis makes his way up to lead us in prayer, I want to ask everybody to keep a special prayer for Tim Richardson's wife. I got an update from Tim this morning. She's doing better. She's in ICU, day 4. She went in for a gallbladder procedure. They had a great night of rest, which is what his prayer was for yesterday. So let's keep Tim's family and his amazing bride in our prayers. Lewis, thanks.
Okay, if we could bow our heads in prayer. And as we pray today, let us all keep in mind Tim and his wife and his entire family. And let's just pray that God will look favorably upon them and bless Tim's wife with a full and quick and speedy recovery. Oh, good and gracious God, we give you thanks for the many blessings in our lives. We give you thanks for this Rotary Club and the opportunity it gives us to work together for the good of others. We are once again challenged by another surge of the deadly COVID virus. Please bless our community so that we can work together to minimize the effects of the virus. With so many suffering from the effects of the pandemic, it is important for us as Rotarians to practice service above self. We need to reach out to those in need, especially those who are most distant, those who are forgotten, and those who are most in need of understanding, consolation, and help. As we serve others, we should always be reminded of the 4-way test in all that we do. Lord, we ask that you bless this Rotary Club, its members, and the work that we do. Lord, please bless this food to the nourishment of our body and us unto your service. We ask all these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
And if you would join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Grab that. Thanks, Lewis. And as we listen to Lewis's thoughts about it's a great time to help and reach out to on our fellow Rotarians, the best way to reach out to Tim is by text. And for those of you that follow him on Facebook, you can see his updates that his son is putting out on his lovely bride. So a great way to support Tim and his family, and they would love to hear from people on text. So with that in mind, I want to thank our Rotarians in service today. Lewis, thanks again for your wise words, and we're glad to see you back. Chuck Musgrove, our greeter, and Gabrielle Van Ness for helping with registrar today. Thank you. And just a couple of announcements we'll get to here in a minute, but first we've got a My Rotary story. And again, thanks to Keith May. See Keith if you're interested. And today's story is about Chuck Musgrave.
I started Rotary the first time in 1978 when I joined the Downtown Rotary Club when I first started my business. And it lasted about 18 months, maybe a little less, and they threw me out for not coming often enough and not paying their exorbitant dues. And I didn't go back to Rotary until 1990. And the reason I remember that is because Ray Herbert was president of the club that I joined at that time. It was Northwest Oklahoma City Rotary Club. And I remember things in Rotary like who was around at that period of time, like who was the president. I remember it was Ray. And he left the club shortly after that. I hope I didn't drive him out. So I've been a Rotarian officially for about 31 years. I joined Rotary primarily because I wanted to meet more people, to be around people that kind of thought like I did, but I didn't know a lot about it other than my dad had been a Rotarian and business people were in Rotary. And so that's really kind of how I joined. But I began to get the feeling that Rotary is really not about a club, it's about the people that are Rotarians. And then I learned about the four-way test, and I thought, you know, this is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. You know, and I think it's a big organization, all the people believe in the four-way test. You can trust them, you can rely on them. And I thought, well, this is something unique. And pretty soon my accountant was a Rotarian, and I buy jewelry from a Rotarian. And, you know, my doctor was a Rotarian. Almost all the people, my insurance agent, all the people that I do business with, I try and do business with Rotarians. So it's people that makes Rotary. And so, you know, the more people I get to meet, the more people that can do things for me, the more things I can do things for, is why I stay in Rotary. And that's why I'm enjoying this club. The people in this club have done great things for me, and I've only been a member a short period of time. But I like meeting Rotarians all around the country, and I particularly like being in this club.
Okay, thanks Chuck for sharing, and again, thanks to Keith. And Chuck, you didn't mention your banker. I hope your banker's a Rotarian. If not, we can work on that. But thanks, Chuck, for everything that you do, especially at the district level, to help us maximize our money and grants. So thanks again for sharing, Chuck. Okay, you'll see on your table just a brief update. A couple weeks ago, we have a plan in place. If we will continue to offer online Zoom for a couple reasons. One, for the people that are busy and they want to be a part of it, but they can't get away from their desk. But two, for those people that may feel more comfortable online. So if you want to shake, shake. If you don't want to shake, don't shake. We want to allow everybody to feel comfortable. We will continue our Zoom. If you have any questions about that, please see me, see Beth. We're focused on it. We're focused on the data that's out there. And we'll continue to be flexible. We'll continue to be respectful. We'll continue to give everybody options on what makes them feel best. So keep that in mind. And our upcoming speakers, you'll see here, I'm not sure about October. We might be going downhill with that guy, but exciting to see the list of all the other speakers that'll be coming to our club soon. This club has a deep and rich history of having excellent speakers. Today, we have another one, and we're excited here in a little bit to spend some time with Wayne. Just a brief reminder, we do have, through the generosity of a donor, we have a matching gift. So if you want to give to the local Edmond Rotary Foundation, we have a donor who's going to match points for you at the international level. So if you, for example, gave $100 to the local Edmond Rotary Foundation and it helps some of the grants we couldn't pay this year because we had more requests, we had money to give, this donor is going to allow you to get points towards your Paul Harris Fellow. So keep that in mind. After the meeting today, Keith Mays is going to have a quick meeting for anyone interested in community service. We're going to look at options to replace the pancake supper. The board is excited about Keith and his committee and what they want to do to help serve others in our community. It's a great way, too, for someone who maybe wants to be on the board someday to get involved. So again, that meeting will be right after this meeting with Keith, right up here at the front. And then finally, the August month is our membership drive. For those of you that have been in Rotary for a while, we will have this year again a drawing with a very nice gift card to a local restaurant. So every time you bring a guest in August, you'll get your name in for that. So with that in mind, those are the club announcements. And Chief Younger, Sergeant at Arms. Keith May on Chief Younger's team was Sergeant at Arms. This will be probably Bedlam based.
Okay, everybody. Like he said, I'm going to be doing a we're having a committee meeting for community service. The first thing we're doing is a clothing drive for one of the elementary schools, Sunset, and I'd like to see some people start bringing some things if they want to help next week to this room, if they can, if they want to purchase small sizes in pants, shoes, underwear for boys and girls. Then obviously money will buy some stuff too, and we'll start taking it to them about the first week of school or so. So we're going to hang out right here afterwards if you're interested in some of the different projects. We're looking at about one project per month, approximately. So I'm the Sergeant of Arms right now. I like sports, so there's a lot going on in the sports world right now. Two really hot button issues that I'm not going to shade too much into, because that could not go well in a Rotary meeting, I guess. But obviously the SEC, Big 12, OU Texas, all that. And then last night, wow, the Simone Biles deal. That's fascinating. I'm going to be reading about that later today when I get off work. Anyway, speaking of sports, the spirit of the Olympic Committee, I think it's a wonderful thing. So everybody, how about donate $1 for your favorite Olympic sport? Huh? Krista, what's your favorite Olympic sport?
Surely gymnastics, of course.
Well, gymnastics is obviously.
I had $3.
Three, okay.
For OU and Texas applying to the SEC, and I'm really sorry about that, OSU. And I'm really sorry about that, Texas A&M. Then another $1 for Simone Biles for the courage that it takes to put her mental, physical, and emotional health first and have the gold be second. And then my third and last $1 for Katie Ledecky for 1,500.
1,500, the first time ever last night.
I had to go take a nap.
Scott, what is your favorite Olympic sport?
I kind of like the swimming.
Swimming, yeah. I think swimming is super cool. I like the redhead 17-year-old girl from Alaska the other night that won, was that the 200-meter butterfly? That was super cool. So, and we're gonna go around the room for announcements, and anybody has a birthday, and you have an announcement, Chuck?
Yeah, I got it now.
Okay.
So, my neighbor is a Rotarian, and there's a good story for that. You're going to have to listen to it. I was with Citibank, and I've been a good customer of theirs for a long time, and I found a building that was, I don't, but it was a real bargain if you could get it bought. And the number was a pretty big number, and Citigroup wasn't going to loan me the money. And I'd already put a contract down on the building because I needed that building. And so I went back to my Rotary Club, which was written at that time, and a fellow named Wayne was down there, and I said, Wayne, can you make building loans too at your bank? And he said, sure. He said, I can make building loans. I said, come out and look at this thing. So he and I walked through it, and I said, they wanted me to have an appraisal. I can't afford to pay for an appraisal. And he said, no, he said, we'll loan you the money. You put down 10%, and we'll loan you the rest of the money. And so I bought a 70,000 square foot building with 13 dock spaces for $650,000 that I wouldn't have been able to buy had I not run into Wade, and he loaned me the money. So yes, my banker is a Rotarian.
Excellent story. Culver, what's your favorite Olympic sport? Tennis, okay, yeah. Who won? Is that still going on? You're not that close into it then. Anybody else have any announcements? Sherry, do you have an announcement?
I do. It may not be an Olympic sport yet, but my favorite sport is Dancing with the Stars. We're doing a Rotarian dancer right here, Krista Jones. And it's September 9th. We only have 6 or 7 tables left. So if anybody else doesn't have a table and wants one, they better let us know soon. So thank you, Krista.
And we'll be getting more of an update from Krista on her training methods as that progresses. Maybe we can start a blog too. She can be posting things. Anybody else have any? Conrad? Okay. Okay. Well, I'll hand the mic back to the president.
All right, Keith, thanks again. It's now the exciting time of the meeting where we get to say hello to all of our friends on Zoom. So Jessica, hello Barry Bell. Barry, we hope you're resting and healing up great. Betty Dehart, Christine Meredith, Cynthia Ormsby, everybody wave to our Zoomer friends. Linda Banks, Randall Knowles, Ray Hibbert, Scott Kopenbarger, and Tom Johnson. So thank you again for all of you that are joining us on Zoom. Thank you to Jessica and Beth for everything you do. So I'm going to ask Chris Berry with the Y to come forward, and I want to tell everyone today we're going to get uncomfortable. There's a lot of leaders, a lot of professionals, a lot of friends in this room. Today, as we learn more about diversity and inclusion, I'm going to ask that you approach today's meeting with the 4 C's in mind: courage, courtesy, curiosity, and candor. Just remember that meaningful and impactful conversations are not always meant to be comfortable. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite Chris Berry to introduce today's speaker.
Okay, well, I'm honored to introduce our speaker today. Our speaker is Wayne Snow. Wayne is the CEO of Snow Business Solutions, LLC, a diversity and inclusion consultancy. I've had the honor to know Wayne as he's a member of the YMCA of Greater Oklahoma City Board. Wayne is a veteran of the U.S. Army. Wayne, we thank you for your service. Alumni of Florida State, has also certified by the Newspaper Association of America and American Press Institute, and planned, coordinated, facilitated, and effective diversity and inclusion training for over 3,000 employees. Wayne's got countless awards and honors through different organizations, and really excited to hear his presentation today. So without further ado, we'll introduce Wayne.
The video. No, I want to go with the video. Mm-hmm.
You grab the mic when you want to.
Okay.
I'm a human being just like you. It's emotional for me. So I said, you know what? My arrangement is going to start tomorrow. So right, that's pretty much the most consistent thing in the song. And the video is and I've never been able to buy it in a musical context, right?
Okay.
But in the midst of
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate the introduction to the Rotary Club of Edmond. You know a little about me based on what's been shared with you this afternoon, but you don't know my story, and I don't know yours. So let me just make a little sense of why I chose to start our little talk, our conversation, our brief engagement this afternoon over the next 30 minutes or so with an impactful yet practical example of how easy and how simple it is to create an inclusive culture in your organization or your company. I got some training years ago. In fact, the year was 1969. I was a 3rd grader in elementary school, identified as a student with high potential. and was selected by my teacher and principal to attend a 12-week program with other high potential students in the district in Pensacola, Florida. The program was held at this big Methodist church on North 9th Avenue. I was very excited. My mother was very excited. My siblings were excited for me. And you know what? This gentleman right here, Duke, with the arrow over his head, that's Duke. Duke, as a part-time college student, as a counselor for that program, Duke's job was to pick me up, transport me to, and after the program, to transport me back home to my family. Well, that first ride with Duke, wow, I learned a new song that was just, introduced by Sly and the Family Stone in 1969. So I listened to that song to and from that program. Next Thursday comes. My mother reminds me, Wayne, in a few hours, Duke will be picking you up for the program. I get excited. I was looking so forward to it. So I just, because of that excitement, I began to sing. Don't call me when, don't call me when, in this booming voice. Excuse me? Where'd you get that from? Where'd you hear that at? I was a third grader now. I was mature enough to decide if I was going to go left, if I was going to go right. But the way in which my mom asked that question, excuse me, where'd you hear that? I knew I had to go right here. Said, well, I listened to it in the car on the way to the program last week. Duke was playing it on the radio. The next thing I know, my mother makes a phone call and leaves a message for Duke. Duke, can you come about 15 minutes early? I have something I'd like to talk with you about. So Duke comes 15 minutes before we were to leave to go to that program. My mother asked me and my siblings, hey, you all step outside. I need to talk with Duke. About 15 minutes later, I see Duke. He walks out. His chin is in his chest. And it was like it was yesterday. He looked back and he said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The next day, I remember a phone conversation my mom had with Mrs. Baird, who we're celebrating her 100th birthday this year. She was born in 1921. Awesome. And I just hear my mom on the phone saying, Mrs. Baird, you don't have to apologize. Duke and we had a conversation on yesterday. You don't have to apologize. Well, Duke had gone home. He had informed his mother what had happened. His mother reached out to my mother to apologize. Well, to this day, and this is a photo in 2013 now, because every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every 4th of July, wow, if I visited home, I knew that I was going to see my big brother and Don. And on most occasions, I was going to see Mrs. Baird to say hello and to see how she was doing. This is an example of the positive impact when we forgive unconscious bias. Duke did not know, top of mind. Duke wasn't conscious that that was a song that might be offensive to others. And Duke will not tell me what he and my mother talked about, but he will share that, Wayne, we're a part of one another's family because, number one, your mother took the right approach to handling that, to calling me out for listening to that song and exposing you to it. Your mother wasn't confrontational. She wasn't angry. She just expressed how the values she's trying to teach you as her kids that was not in line with those values. That was an experience. So let me start with the end in mind as I talk with you in the middle of the day about the adverse impact of unconscious bias and the consequences that an organization can be exposed to when we don't address it and we don't mitigate it. You see, unconscious bias is that bias that's forgiven through awareness, through knowledge, through education, and through communication. It's about treating each individual with respect and dignity at all times. It's that humanitarian component there, you see? But the adverse effects is an organization, a company, you're not going to be as productive, you're not going to be as innovative, you're not going to be as creative, and you're not going to perform as well as you can perform if you don't work towards an inclusive culture. How do we mitigate it? We'll talk a little about that in a few minutes. But first, let me just ensure and confirm that we're all living in the same reality. I mean, you can't engage in social media, read a newspaper, watch or listen to any news program without being inundated with information around race relations, economic strife, the pandemic, higher than expected unemployment, or social change. You cannot. Are we all on the same page there? I mean, since the killing of George Floyd, that race in this country, and believe me, across all of the dimensions of diversity, in the interest of time, I'm really focusing on race today because I only get to share a snippet of what I do in helping organizations assess their current climate of diversity and inclusion and engage their employees around what needs to happen and how employees feel about their sentiment toward belonging. The single most outstanding driver of our cultural differences is unconscious bias. Is that tendency, that feeling, that opinion, but it's subconscious. You know, we attempt to process about 40 million pieces of information each day. It's too complex. There's no way we can effectively process that much information. As individuals, our brain tends to effectively process approximately 40 pieces on average of information each day. So what do? It's so complex. We revert back to what we're comfortable with. We revert back to what we know. We revert back to those stereotypes, to the generalizations, to the assumptions, to those things that we've been exposed to, right or wrong. And that doesn't help us mitigate unconscious bias in the workplace. How do we do that? The foundation for doing so is allowing individuals to feel safe, allow individuals through experiential learning to share, to listen, and to understand the cultural differences and to respect and appreciate the unique talents that each individual brings to the table. There's some ground rules. It has to be held in the strictest of confidence. When people share those personal experiences, they don't want you to take that specific experience and run out and share it with everyone. It's under the auspice of what's learned, what's heard here stays here, but what's learned here is what leaves here in an effort to make a difference. It's about open and honest dialogue. I'm very comfortable with having the conversation about our differences because it is the only way that we're going to create an environment where there's true respect and dignity shown towards one another. It's about actively listening, listening to understand, and listening to appreciate the perspectives that one has that might be different from ours. It's about non-judgment. It's about not judging someone based on each of those individual dimensions of diversity that they might represent. Because when we create a purpose-driven learning environment, then we create a purpose-driven and more productive environment for our organization. A number of the dimensions of diversity that it's important for us to talk about and to address. Here, what does your mind conjure? What's going through your mind? Oh, we see that there's a black individual and a white individual having a conversation. They could be friends, they could be colleagues, they could be relatives. But we see the white guy, as it says, is smiling, is taking the opportunity to smile, or he sees that the black person is smiling. Now, the question mark, is the black person about to ask him a question, thinking of, I have something to ask him? Or is that black person, what's his motive? Is it positive or is it negative? With respect and dignity towards one another, hopefully they're having a good conversation about some topic. But we see the check mark here behind the black individual's head, they check something off to say, maybe this person's okay, or, oh, I got what I need from this person, etc. What does your mind conjure? Boy, there was a PBS NewsHour Marist poll last year around race relations between whites and blacks. Is there anyone in this room who thinks that race relations between whites and blacks over the past year has improved? I'd like to see that hand. No? It's pretty much in line here. In fact, I'm surprised that almost 6 out of 10 of those folks surveyed said that it was worse. I think it's a little higher than that. But this was a scientific poll that was done. In my work as a full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, I take pride in that work, not only in providing consultation to companies and organizations, but I look to collaborate, to evaluate, to train, and to help them drive results. In collaborating with leadership, with different stakeholders in the organization, with employees, to develop a roadmap towards a more inclusive culture. I evaluate, I assess through a behavior-based diversity climate assessment, and I measure for the prevalence of diversity and inclusion across a number of DEI tenets. The intention of the organization, what is it? Has leadership communicated the importance of diversity and inclusion in the organization? Promotion, how does the organization promote diversity, equity, and inclusion? In its recruitment process, in its leadership development process, in its consideration of promotions from within. I look at leadership. Does that leadership reflect the community in which we live in and the community in which that organization serves? I help them take an introspective look. And I mentioned to Mr. Town that I hadn't met him formally in the past, but I was very, very, very impressed with his diversity statement after the killing of George Floyd last year. I saw empathy, I saw understanding, I saw him reflect, and the introspection that he had is one where he said, I'm looking to walk a different path. And it is very important for us to come together and to bridge the gap, not only between race, but among genders, among sexual, those who orient themselves sexually differently than we might, those who have different religious beliefs, those who have disabilities, those who are from socioeconomic backgrounds different from ours, pulling it together, evaluating. And I also facilitate open, honest, genuine, and respectful conversation to ensure that our work to close the gap between our cultures and to drive toward a more humanitarian approach and treating each other with respect and dignity on a daily basis is what moves us towards a more inclusive organization as well as our community. I also work in It's Not for Naught, because at the end of the day, what are the bottom line results? Studies show that a more inclusive culture is one that's more creative, it's one that's more innovative, and it's one that performs at a higher level than non-inclusive organizations. In working with organizations on mitigating unconscious bias in the workplace and to drive toward a culture of inclusion, I work with them around that strategy. Number one, know what unconscious bias is. I'm not talking about the conscious bias. I'm not talking about the explicit bias. Where top of mind, one has opinions and one has feelings that they want to articulate, and that drives us in the opposite direction. There's an indirect correlation when it comes to an inclusive culture. Bringing more voices to the table as an organization, more diverse voices, so that everyone understands where the company is headed, where the organization is headed, and how we get there by hearing different perspectives, and many of those we may not agree with. Stemming the dysfunctional equity cycle, not allowing an incident to happen before we address it, but proactively driving toward an inclusive culture allows you to be prepared when an incident does happen. Lots of companies that are not as inclusive, when that incident happens, they have a PR issue on their hand. And many companies, it's tough. They get anxious, they get nervous about exactly how to address it. I help companies figure out how to stem that dysfunctional equity cycle and to not allow those situations to occur. Leadership, setting the tone. That's what I was so impressed about Mr. Towns' approach last year, was him looking inward and saying, I'll set the tone and I'll walk the path. And seeing diversity as a strength of the organization and the impact, the positive impact that it can have on the bottom line helps a company decide, I think, if they're going to be more inclusive. And you see companies and organizations really driving to the table to say diversity and inclusion is very important to us. I'm proud, very proud of my work with the YMCA. It's why I think the YMCA is one of the best run organizations in the state, because Kelly Kay and his leadership team, they have an unending commitment to diversity and inclusion. I head up the diversity, equity, and inclusion and global initiatives at the YMCA, have been a board member since 2014. I'm proud of administering the diversity climate assessment last year, letting the YMCA know exactly what its employee sentiment is toward belonging, and then conducting a half-day workshop, and then a number of webinars, and then follow-up workshops since then. We started in September. And folks, it's not a one and done. It is a gradual process. It is having that unending commitment to ensuring that meaningful change can occur if we place focus on it, and we have diversity and inclusion as an organizational goal in our strategy. I'm proud of my work with the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. where I administered a diversity climate assessment amongst the Board of Directors and the Board of Governors last year, and presented those results during the Leadership Summit in October. I'm also proud of the current work that I'm doing, where CJAC has hired a team led by FSB Architects, the largest architectural firm in the state of Oklahoma, and HOK, the largest builder of jails in this country. As one of the consultants on this team, we've been hired to assess, to gain community input, to gain stakeholder input into three possible options. One, a renovation of the current jail. Two, adding on to the current jail. Or three, building a new jail. Over the past few weeks since we were awarded that contract, we've been meeting with those from the legal community, from the health care community, from the mental health community. We have a couple of community input meetings that we're scheduling, the first one being in a couple of weeks here, where we'll make recommendations. I'm proud of the work that I'm doing in providing a diverse lens into the process that's going to determine the vision and the future of the county jail in Oklahoma City. My work is around the 5 pillars that shape an effective DEI strategy. That's engagement, trust, respect, purpose, and performance. You're not going to get maximum performance until the organization focuses on engagement. At the YMCA, we've been focused on engagement since August of last year. Because first, that's a prerequisite to building a trusting culture. When we get there, then the employees feel that they can trust that the emotions that they have when they want to raise a concern, because they're from an underrepresented group, they don't have to feel like, oh, I'm going to get fired, or I'm going to be seen as a troublemaker. But when we create that culture of trust, that person can contribute more and be more effective when they can let the shoulders down and to say, wow, my supervisor, leadership, they understand that when I raise a concern, it's not that I'm complaining or I'm whining, et cetera, et cetera. Once we build that culture of trust, then we begin to work on that culture of trust, that culture of respect. This is a 2-year process at least for an organization to get there. Because once we build that culture of respect in that organization, then everyone is treated with respect and dignity. And now we can focus on the common goal that we all have, and we can be purpose-driven and all work towards that goal. And out of those results, eventually, that company or organization starts to see improved performance because of its commitment. Some of the conversation topics around diversity, inclusion, and dignity. Today's reality, a roadmap to an inclusive culture. I facilitate sessions around creating that safe space, around the status quo, embracing disruptive tactics, etc. Conversation topics around belonging, foundational communication, that's listening versus hearing, and that body language is not in what we say, many times it's in how we say it. To the measurability of an inclusive organization, because we know what gets measured is what gets done. And I work with organizations to identify those key performance indicators around diversity, equity, and inclusion that helps to improve the performance of the organization. I thank you for listening. At this time, I'll take any questions if we have a few minutes. Yes, sir.
If you're on a nonprofit board or in a position where you're hiring a director or a manager, what's an appropriate way to ask if they have how they feel about diversity and inclusion?
To ask them how they feel about, you ask them directly.
Or their experience.
Yeah, you ask them directly. What's your level of experience around diversity, equity, and inclusion? When you ask it from an experience perspective, then it's not off-putting. It doesn't put them on their heels. Talk to me a little about your experience in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Have you recruited, via a diverse pool of candidates, et cetera? Tell us about that experience.
So as a leader, this politically sensitive culture is taboo, touchy. In a business setting, how do you approach? I appreciate what you said about respecting cultural differences.
Yes.
And we should be, I'm hearing you say we should be comfortable talking about those.
Absolutely.
And I agree. I used to, back before it was television, for real estate, there was a reporter named Nathan Foster. I spent a lot of time with him in the past. And we used to have great conversations. However, why was it people on the job? So I was never around. And then now, I can't even, if I say, when you, I can't dance again. I can't jump as high as you can. Oh, Lord, why is that bad? I mean, it's real. I mean, look at the NBA, there's 93% black players. The NFL 71%. That's a positive, great thing. How come I can't talk about that? How do I talk about that if I want to?
Well, because I'm one that respects and receives different perspectives, not everyone, responds that way. But let me answer your question in this way. In general, due to the systemic, challenges, the systemic racism that's occurred over hundreds of years in this country, it's created an imbalance, and through that process, it's a trigger. Because it's basically one is receiving that information, comprehending it as a stereotype. Okay. For instance, I conduct an exercise. I am, but. Well, I'm African American, but I don't run fast. Okay, it's a generalization, and so it does trigger that type of response from many people. Okay, folks, let me just express to you how excited I am to be here. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you just some approaches and some perspectives on how we can mitigate unconscious bias in the workplace in an effort to drive towards a more inclusive culture. Thank you.
Wayne, thank you so much for your time, for being here today, for sharing your experience, for sharing your heart. In your honor, we have a book that we'll donate to the library at Ida Freeman Elementary. And I want to take just a quick second here and tell everyone what Wayne's put on here. His 100% rule is really a 200% real world rule. 90% positive attitude plus 110% effort equals success. So it's okay to have a little bit of a downer attitude as long as you always have the right heart and the right effort. So Wayne, thanks. Thanks for sharing that for the kids at Ida Freeman. Okay, our scholarship drawing. Wayne, we're going to ask you to draw. We raise money every year for scholarships, kids here in Edmond. And it will be the last four digits, 3425, 3425. 3425. You must have scooted. Try it again. 3431. Natalie? JD? Okay. And in honor of Buddy Morris, we're looking for the King of Diamonds.
As Natalie's proxy. The king, you say?
King of Diamonds. Not close at all. Okay, as we go out, I ask everyone to consider that, just remember, having those difficult, those uncomfortable conversations with someone doesn't mean that you're working against that person. It just means that you value them enough, you respect them enough, and you love them enough